Call to the order, meeting of the Board of Selectmen. We'll begin tonight's meeting by recognizing Phillip Vissering, who will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Phillip, if you will stand and lead.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Phillip. And so, in just one moment, we're going to have Phillip come back up and speak a little bit. But before we do, we have our meeting minutes from the October 16th meeting. Do I hear a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from October 16th as written.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt,
Second.
seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any comments? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, passes. So this evening we have several communications and announcements, the first of which is that we have Phillip, who is joining us this evening. He is an Eagle Scout, and so I want to put him on the spot and ask if he wouldn't mind approaching the podium at our invitation and talking a little bit about the project that he's pursued.
So for my Eagle project, I built a trail on Foxwood Drive. It was about 0.8 miles and connected the Foxwood residents to Woodchuck Trail, which was an old road that went through the woods nearby.
That's a long trail, 0.8 miles. That's a...
Yeah, it went through multiple elevation changes and had to put it through a wetland, so we had to get approval, and then another person is planning to build a boardwalk for the trail through the wetlands.
Wow.
How long did that take?
The development was like 3 or 4 months, and then the actual construction took 1 day, which quite surprised us.
Yeah, how many guys did you have on your team?
We had like 20, 25 people.
Well, that's why I only took it that you had a good team out there. Good for you.
Yeah.
Well, the board is grateful for your giving back to our community, and we're excited that you've achieved this distinction. And so we wanted to recognize you this evening, not just by having you explain the project, but also recognize you with this honor. So on behalf of the board, Phil, this is a certificate of achievement that we are presenting to you in recognition of receiving your Eagle Scout rank on June 15th, 2017, for your hard work, leadership skills, and dedication, which are a credit to you and the community. Congratulations on your achievement from the North Andover Board of Selectmen.
Phillip, may I ask you a question? How old are you?
I'm 14 now, but when I got Eagle, I was 13.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Absolutely amazing. Good
Good
for
for you.
you. And may I ask how many badges did you acquire?
Last time I checked, I had around 60 merit badges. The required to get Eagle is 21.
Good for you. You should be very proud of yourself.
Thank you. Yeah.
Congratulations. So don't think that you have to sit through this entire meeting. If you want to, you can. But we were just happy to recognize you and thank you again publicly for the work you did for making a part of our community so accessible. So thanks.
Nice job.
So also under communications and announcements is that big day is quickly approaching. The North Andover Master Plan Advisory Committee has their first large public meeting scheduled for this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. So that's Thursday, November 2nd. It's at the North Andover High School cafeteria, which is at 430 Osgood Street. I know that they have events posted on Facebook, and I know that they've done a great job of getting into the press, handing out flyers at different community events, but if you're able to attend, they would very much appreciate your feedback as they put together a plan for our community over the next decade. Any other communications or announcements from the
Well,
board?
trick or treat.
So if we can talk about a couple of things storm-related, I'd
Yes.
appreciate doing that. Let me, first of all, thank the people here in Town Hall and the folks in other departments that worked diligently all day today, kept the building open, were available to the public, and addressed addressed a wide range of different issues around town. We certainly know the community was impacted. We had at one point 95%-ish of all residential properties without power and an equal number of commercial properties, and we continue to operate somewhere in the 80 to 85% range. So many of the folks here and in other places around town continue to operate without power. We're sensitive to that, and we're responding as quickly as we can in terms of those, clearing the roadways and making the town ready to open up again when we can. We have regular dialogue with National Grid. They had more than 400,000 power outages, vast majority once again and regularly continues to be the Merrimack Valley. North Andover is sort of right in the heart of large power outages on a regular basis. The last number I saw was about 10,000 households out of the 12,000. So we continue to work with them. They focus first on 114 and next under priority on 125, typically to get to our care facilities that are located in those areas and to get our traffic signals back up and operating, which in addition to the streetlights trying to drive through intersections, I'd recommend no one drives near me. I'm not someone you want to drive near when there's no traffic signals. It's probably not a particularly good thing. So we're working on those. With that, though, I've been working with Dr. Price around schools. I've been communicating with, I apologize for texting while working here, but Jen has authorized me to indicate that schools will be closed tomorrow, and she'll communicate that out to the school public. And that I'm recommending that we don't proceed with trick-or-treat hours tomorrow. I'll leave up to the board some recommendation I can make to the public for an alternative date. My concern is if you look outside, there are currently no streetlights, and at the pace National Grid is able to finish the work, if for some reason tomorrow, which I'm hoping that's not the case, that we're not streetlights, it just doesn't make a whole bunch of sense to put kids out there with houses without power, with streets without lighting, with possible limbs still hanging that we're addressing. And so I think we wouldn't want to do that. And so my recommendation is that we move trick-or-treat, and that maybe a brief conversation where you give me some guidance as to an alternative date that I can communicate back out to the public as quickly as possible.
Great Pumpkin will have to wait, is what you're telling us.
The Great Pumpkin's going to have to
Well, and
wait.
the concern about not waiting until tomorrow at some date or time, sometime, we won't be able to communicate that in time out to
Yeah.
folks. If we say, okay, why don't we see around 3 o'clock what it's like, but then we don't know we can get that message out to
Correct.
everybody, right, that it's been canceled.
And Thursday night, we have a fairly well-publicized town event that a lot of our town volunteers have put a lot of energy into. I don't know that we want to take away from turnout at that master planning committee by scheduling trick-or-treating that night.
So that leaves Wednesday, Friday, or Saturday potential, right? We don't want to let the kids down and not have it at all, so we should definitely have. Plus, I bought full-size bars this year. I want to give those out. There's one lying around the house. All right, you got them. I don't want those lying around the
Just
house
announced
for too
he's getting
long.
the good stuff.
So what about the possibility of doing it on Wednesday? You don't want to put it off too long.
I know.
The kids are excited, people are decorated, and some are decorated, some are not. Some did and are no longer.
Right.
With the wind, but perhaps Wednesday. Would we get a report like first thing in the morning if we did a robocall? Because if everyone's power is up and the kids are home from school, will we get one early enough in the morning? I mean, I agree with Dick that too late in the day is not good enough.
The only concern I have is that we can wait. We're actually a little later than some because we take the stance that we want to have as much information as possible, and that in the morning then we don't have a full extent of the outage. So we do get reports from National Grid, but they're not to the extent that I can really nuance it down. What's that threshold? 50% of the houses, 50% of the streets, 25%? I would rather shut it down, know we're shutting it down, communicate in this venue and other venues as quickly as possible, let parents prepare for the alternative, not create any uncertainty or mystery, and pick an alternative date and proceed with that and communicate as aggressively as we can from now until the end of the day tomorrow. And hopefully all the power will show up 5 minutes from now, which would be great, and we will have made a decision, but at least we will have done so out of prudence. So I'd recommend we make the decision now and communicate as aggressively as possible.
So what are your thoughts on Wednesday?
Well,
I like Wednesday.
Well, I like Wednesday too, but obviously sooner rather than later, but are we going to be discussing this again tomorrow because the
Yep.
power is only up in half of the town
Yeah.
tomorrow, or should we give ourselves enough of a buffer to say,
Why-
let's do it on Saturday and then have everyone enjoy it like 4 to 6 or 4 to 7 on Saturday. or
Maybe
something.
this,
I agree.
maybe this is a way to test out the, yeah, I hate
Chris,
to
don't
wade
go there.
into
Don't go
Say
there,
it
Chris.
first.
but the fact of the matter is, hey, opportunity to have it on a weekend.
Friday or Saturday night, but either way, that gives us enough notice, and I think that gives us enough of an opportunity to make sure as many residents, I mean, if we're trying to accommodate residents, let's make sure that we're accommodating as many folks as possible.
Yeah.
Friday night, there's a big football game in North Andover too, right? And other events going on, so.
I think we should shoot for Wednesday. And then make the adjustment if tomorrow, if it's a
But
problem.
if we don't know, so I guess the timing, just, Mr. Miller, look at the timing thing. We're not going to, doesn't seem like we're going to wake up tomorrow morning and know we're good to roll significantly. So really talking about making a decision end of the day tomorrow, if you were to kind of make a game time call, when would that be made, roughly?
Well, I'd never make the game time call on game day. So I guess tomorrow, I'm struggling with when there would be appropriate
Well,
time tomorrow.
we absolutely have to get the robocall out ASAP to let the residents know that it's canceled for tomorrow. So ideally, we want to be able to make sure we're comfortable with whatever date we are including as the replacement in that robocall, and on Facebook and social media, et
Yep.
cetera.
And I'd
So-
like to link it to the schools, which I can probably do if I continue to communicate on the parallel with the superintendent during the meeting. So I think the important thing to note was that National Grid indicated to us at a 1 p.m. conference call this afternoon that they were looking at a 72-hour window to get everybody back up. Now, that's their full range of communities. And I always say that it is in their own interest to pursue larger chunks of outages first after our priorities in certain categories of structures, because it looks better for them if they show 100,000 people without power and then 75, rather than 100,000 and then 99,000, right? So they're going to bring back chunks online, but they're indicating to us that it could take up to 72 hours to restore all power. Now, it might be less than that, but I think you want to work within that zone and be safely outside of that zone when making decisions, because you just don't want to bump into a circumstance that you're moving forward with something with still, even several thousand residents without power. So I would, when I would make a game time decision to communicate to the public during the day about something happening at night, I just wouldn't recommend that we do that.
And the reality is that we didn't plan this, so no matter what, there's going to be a conflict. I think that
Yeah,
that's it.
No matter what day we pick, people are not going to be
Yeah.
happy with it.
Um, I mean, my personal preference would be to kick it to this weekend instead of playing games with hope. Yeah, exactly, hoping and then having to go back with robocalls and then creating even more confusion. And at that point, people are like, "I'm just sick of it." But
So are you saying Friday or Saturday?
I'm ambivalent. If we go to a weekend day, whatever's most convenient. I would say if there's a football game on Friday night that the community's already gearing up for locally, it probably doesn't make so much sense that we do it Friday. Let's go aim for Saturday. I will throw it out to the board. I just wouldn't want to end up having to have multiple robocalls go up.
Well, I'm not having kids at trick or treat anymore. I'm indifferent. I could either do it Wednesday or Saturday. I tend to think if we do it till Saturday, we're getting over that 72-hour watch period, and we're giving people time to prepare for it on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the argument for people last year, if I was paying attention around the moving it to a weekend discussion, was so people wouldn't have commuting issues and whatnot. So if we're going to move it to the weekend, I guess I'd just assume Saturday than Friday. I agree Wednesday is probably risky. If they're saying 72 hours, then I'd prefer it Wednesday, but I don't know.
72 hours, when it start today with 72?
1 o'clock. Yeah. And it's arbitrary. I mean, they're giving us a range, right? It could be 12 hours, it could be 80 hours.
But I would think that I don't want us as a municipality to keep going back and telling people, no, it's this date, so I'm comfortable with Saturday.
Yeah, well, the downside is everything's all set on Wednesday. I mean, I think
Yep.
that's
Absolutely.
that's the win. So I think kind of all things considered.
People will be busy doing their laundry and dishes anyways. If anybody's
Oh,
else is
it's
like
okay.
mine.
What are we doing? We can't take a vote on this, right? It's just-
No, it's just looking
I just need
for
a
guidance,
solid
right?
recommendation on how you want, what you want me to communicate to the public. We'll assume, let's start with the easy stuff. It's going to be 5:30 to 7:30.
Yep.
Okay, yep,
Yeah.
And it's not going to be Tuesday.
No.
correct.
So far, 2 out of 3 are done. We just need a reasonable direction as it relates to which night of the week.
My thought is Saturday.
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 I'd like to see what they say tomorrow and then hopefully do Wednesday, but I'm not gonna feel the same.
I appreciate
You got your directions.
Okay.
But if you get good news tomorrow,
I'll let everyone know. People will know. Things will be, so we have also issued on the town's website and through social media communication about food spoilage and what some general information you should know about that, given how long, things may remain in the fridge. If for some reason there's no school tomorrow and you're around and you're without power and the kids are driving you nuts because all their electronic devices are dead, feel free to come in the hallways here, plug in your devices. If that's a helpful distraction. I know some people have already done that, so.
you know, there's not even a restaurant.
So feel free to do that. And you should know that the public safety folks are in touch with the housing authority to make sure the folks in the housing authorities are, that we're keeping those lines of communication open, so if issues come up, we're around. Public safety staff has been great. Jeff Coco in emergency management is great. So we'll keep those communications going. We don't have a local shelter. We always work off a regional shelter. That's been historically the case. We've been in communication with them. There's no formal need at this time. They're not calling for a formal shelter. But again, we'll continue to monitor the circumstance. We're fortunate it's 60, haven't been out much today, but 60-ish degrees, which helps overall in the overall conversation. So again, feel free to contact public safety agencies or town hall if we can be of any further assistance. We did also get notice today. I've asked Jim Stanford to keep Sear recycling open longer. It'll be open 5 days a week for the balance of November, except for the holiday weekend. We have a notice that we just put on the town's website well into December as well, so that given the amount of additional yard waste that's probably being created from this, residents and businesses, depending, as long as they have a sticker, will be able to dump there 5 days a week through the balance of this month into early December, which should help residents as well.
Were there any, so I saw that other communities had delays with their trash pickup. My trash was picked up at 7:45 this morning, so I have to say I was quite impressed with the hauler that they were there. I'm glad I rushed
Yeah.
out
I
this
think-
morning,
I
not
think,
last night, to bring my trash out.
The hauler did a fantastic job of getting out here right at 7 o'clock. We try to communicate with the residents. They were right on it. I think they've had to double back in a couple of cases where folks probably thought that they weren't going to be here. I would take the opportunity to remind folks that although it's a little inconvenient, getting it out a few minutes before 7 every week as opposed to 11 p.m. This was a bad week to have it out the night before. And we can probably tell by driving around town, which I have, those places which had it out the night before. So I do remind residents if they could get it out closer to delivery time, it helps overall with what happens if a case happens to be inclement weather. But I think everybody did a fantastic job of getting to the odd waste. Getting to the regular waste.
Any other communications? Okay, so we're moving on to consent items. We have before us the North Andover Festival Committee and North Andover Police Association request permission to use the streets in North Andover for the annual Santa Parade on Saturday, November 25th, from noon to 2 p.m., and to limit parking along the parade route. So this is something that they begin working on, I feel like, every January, and they always do a great job. So I know that we have information from the police department, from the fire department, and Public Works saying that there are no conditions for this approval. Again, it's Main Street to Elm Street to Water Street to Main Street to Sutton Street is their route.
Move approval?
Motion made by Selectman Smedili.
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Keen. Any discussion? Anybody in the audience to speak to this? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. Motion passes.
And may I say one thing? I should have said it under communications and announcements. We do have a few more wreaths available, but they are quickly going. So if anyone is interested in adopting a wreath, they're $70. You would make checks out to the Holiday Decorating Committee and send it to 65 Green Street. There's an E at the end of that in North Andover, and but we're filling up pretty quick. So we would like them up for the Santa Parade, as always.
Good thing they weren't up this past weekend.
Thank goodness.
Lot of
We're
Christmas
missing a few
spirit.
flags on that regard, but we'll get them replaced.
Next item on the agenda is we have several appointments, the first of which is the school committee has communicated at our last meeting. The school committee has invited a member of the Board of Selectmen to serve on the superintendent search committee. Selectman Keen expressed an interest in serving. I know that they met on the 24th.
Yeah,
Um,
quite an aggressive schedule.
Really, so we should probably hurry up and motion
Move
to get-
approval
go.
for Selectman King.
Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion or thoughts before you accept this responsibility?
Go get 'em.
No,
Get a good one.
got a
Thank
good
you
one.
to- Thank you to the school committee for including us.
Yes, thank you, exactly.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
The next item is we have Kim Barry to the Old Center Historic District Commission. She would be serving as an alternate, so are there any comments from the appointment subcommittee?
I don't know if anyone's had the chance to meet Kim, but she's got a ton of experience in this area, working actually in Swampscott on similar initiatives. So I think she'll bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the committee, and I'm happy to recommend her appointment.
Absolutely.
Do I hear a motion?
Move approval?
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt,
Second?
seconded by Selectman Smedili. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Congratulations, Kim.
Welcome aboard.
Mr. Valencourt.
Yes, again, Mr. Keen and for Kim Barry, thank you very much for new appointees, for volunteering for these committees, and to all our volunteers. And I'd like to thank you all for your service to the town. And again, it's the heart and soul of our town. It makes us a great place to work, live, play, and learn. So thank you.
Thank you. Next item is we have two units, two affordable housing units that are for sale. The Citizens Housing and Planning Association, more commonly known as CHAPA, has notified the town that the affordable housing units at 200 Chickering Road, Unit 107B, which is at Kittredge Crossing, and 905 Alder Way, the Oak Ridge Village / Maplewood Reserve, are listed for sale, and the board is being asked to decline its right of first refusal. Oh, I'm sorry about that. So the board is being asked to, on these two affordable housing units, to exercise its right of first refusal. So is there anybody in the audience to speak to that? Hearing none. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I'll move that the Board of Selectmen decline, as we normally do, the right of first refusal to purchase the affordable housing units at 200 Chickering Road, Unit 107B, and 95 Alder Way.
Motion made by Selectman Valencourt. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Seconded by Selectman Nobley. Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? We have declined. The final item on the consent is the vote on commercial marijuana establishments. And so for the public at home, we have, and in the audience, last meeting on October 16th, the board heard from the public who weighed in on the 5 different categories under recreational licenses. This evening, we have chosen to continue that discussion. That's how we left it off with our last meeting. And like that last meeting, we are asking any individual members from the public if they would like to weigh in under public comment. We are pushing that regarding this particular topic prior to our discussion. And so if there are any members of the public interested in weighing in, by all means approach the podium. And when you approach the podium, if you just could clearly state your name and address and weigh in with your comment.
My name is Michelle Chen, and my address is 287 Mass Ave in North Andover. Thanks for letting me come here and speak. I wanted to come because I wanted to voice my support for this project at Osgood for the growing facility of medical cannabis. And I support it for a couple of reasons. One is the revenue that would benefit the town. And the second is the medical benefit that medical cannabis has for people who have certain medical conditions, as well as the innovation in research and development that this facility provides by growing it. aside from me personally benefiting or being affected by it because I live in North Andover, I also would benefit because I take medical cannabis for a medical condition. I'm also a mom. I have a very demanding job. My husband has a very demanding job, and he travels a lot. So I have to be high functioning a lot. There's not a lot of room for me to be all over the place. And so just to give you a little more information about medical cannabis and how it relates to me is I have had headaches my entire life. I started getting them when I was a toddler, and as I became an adult, they just continued to get worse. In 2011, I hurt my neck, and I had 2 herniated discs. And so from that point on, I've been suffering from a daily headache. Yes, a headache every single day, waking up, throbbing, needing medication. I see the best doctors in Boston. I have a team at Brigham and Women's, and they have given me every probably kind of medicine, any kind of treatment, also natural, not just medications that you can imagine, but cannot find a solution to the problem, can't fix it. This past March, I ended up in the emergency room with a bleeding ulcer from all the medications that I had been taking. Because of that, can't take NSAIDs anymore. Example of that is Advil. So then my team of doctors say to me, okay, what are we gonna do now for you, Michelle? Because we don't have a lot of options left. And you need to function. And so they recommended medical cannabis, to which my first reply is, what? No, I can't be high. I have to work. What are you talking about? And they said, okay, let's take a step back and let's talk about the research and some education around it, right? And so we did that, and I think there were several things that made me make the decision to take the step to try it. And one of them is that medical cannabis does not mean that you get high because you take medical cannabis. There are a variety of strains. Another reason that I decided to try it is that there are a variety of methods as well. It doesn't mean that you're smoking it, right? Another reason is the way it's regulated. It's like going to a pharmacy. Everything is labeled. It has your name. It's not going to a drug dealer on the street. It's not the same stuff, right, that everyone has in their head that you're going here, you're going there. You can't just walk in and get this stuff, right? And the other piece is the security. In Massachusetts, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but Massachusetts has some of the strictest laws. And I know this isn't going to be a dispensary, but Massachusetts has some of the strictest laws around growing facilities and dispensaries, which is why we don't have the robberies here or anything like that. So when I talked through all this stuff and I did my own research, I said, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. So the benefit to me has been that I've had a 50% reduction in headaches. So that means that 50% of the time now, I don't have to take something to function for pain medication. So that is huge to me, not only physically, but mentally. And, sorry. And I think there's one other story that's really important that I want to share, and it's about a little girl. And all this information, I really urge you can validate it. You go out and look this all up. It's a little girl named Charlotte Figge. And this I learned through all the research when I was trying to make this decision myself. She's from Colorado. She has seizure disorder. And she, at 5 years old, had zero quality of life, could not talk, could not walk, zero quality of life. At this point, the doctors told her parents, we can do nothing more for your child. She will die. She was having huge seizures every 15 minutes. And her mom, and you can watch some of these videos, basically says, I just hope my daughter passes in her sleep. Now, that is gut-wrenching because as a parent, and if you are a parent, you can't even imagine muttering those words, that you would actually say that. And so the parent did some research and saw that CBD oil could potentially help her child. If you don't know what CBD oil is, it is an oil that's derived from the marijuana plant. However, the difference is that CBD oil doesn't have the THC in it. THC is what is the psychoactive ingredient. However, CBD oil is a medical cannabis produced product. And so they worked with some farmers who were actually Christians and were not, potheads or, any into drugs. And they grew this for her. After a week of trying the CBD oil, her seizures were almost non-existent. At 9 years old, this little girl has the quality of life of an almost 9-year-old. And now other children's lives who have these seizure disorders have been saved. I mean, this saved this little girl's life. More than mine, right? This is incredible. And so I guess for me, I really think it would be, amazing for North Andover to be part of this innovation. And we would also reap the benefits, significant benefits in the community as well. And so that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shed.
And I just wanted to say too, if anybody had any questions at all, I know that there's probably, if you have no experience with it, right, around going to a dispensary, any kind of thing like that. I know this is not going to be that, but just anything, please ask. Even if it's negative, if it's, you're whatever, because just becoming educated and just understanding more, I think just really helps you understand. And if you don't have experience with it, then you maybe don't understand everything. So that's all.
Thank you. And thank you for sharing your personal story.
Okay.
For the general public, just so that everyone's fully aware, so this is about recreational. Of course, we've already zoned for medical. There was a discussion at our last meeting about whether or not certain decisions made by this board could impact any possible applications for ideas being floated around. So this isn't a specific hearing about the Osgood project, but I mean, I appreciate that feedback. It doesn't mean you can't discuss it, but I just want the public at home to be aware, the folks in the audience, we're not voting on the Osgood project this evening. So, Mr. McHugh, you had kindly raised your hand.
Hi, I'm Larry McHugh, 136 Castlemere Place in town. This has been quite an issue in town, and I think I recall very, very recently there was a rousing town meeting where this subject was discussed in great detail, and the vote of the citizens of this town was quite clear. I think whether you were voting for or against marijuana at this facility, you recognize that entire event as a great example of democracy of town government, okay? The will of the people at that meeting was quite clear as well. Number one, the answer was no. Number two, the answer was the issue was going to be tabled for 2 years. At least, I think that was the what we were told. And now we find ourselves here discussing a semantic change to the vote and the will of the people of this town. I think everyone in this town, whether they voted for this or against this, who participated in that democratic process knew the outcome and knew what the vote was and knew what the consequences of that vote were. Everyone in this town knows that, and everyone in this room knows that. And I would hate to see a semantics change usurp the will of the people of North Andover. Thank you.
Just, again, another reminder, this is a bylaw that, regardless of how we vote, every municipality that voted no is following the same type of procedure we're following right now, which is, this is the recreational piece of the bylaw. So right now, we don't currently have a bylaw. And so again, for anybody who's coming up to speak, just to help inform you so that you understand what we're voting on 5 different categories under the recreational license. And so we could be voting for nothing under any one of these categories. We could be voting to limit or restrict, or we could be voting to prohibit. But regardless of the Osgood project, again, our neighbors in Andover are going through the same exercise. Other neighbors have already gone through this exercise. This is something I should say that would be happening regardless of what the folks at Osgood wanted to have done, whether they were coming back, never came in the first place. But yes, thank you, Mr. McHugh. There was a gentleman in the back.
Hillman.
Can you speak into the mic, sir?
Excuse me?
Could you speak into the microphone?
Yeah, my name's George Hillman, and I've been in North Andover for quite a few years. I was actually established the Booster Club's T-ball program, and I also established the girls volleyball program in town from 5th to 8th graders. In this case, and one other thing I did back in the 80s, I started the Riverwalk. We did that with Landbass, where we built Riverwalk and took it all the way to where it is today. I'm no longer in there, but I just thought I should let you know about that. I'm here tonight because one of my cohorts, I started a science company back in 1990, which was in the purification area with a Polaroid scientist. And he recently called me and said that he would like to take a look at the marijuana case, where he can show, right now the purity levels of marijuana is in the 50% range, where with his science, with the Polaroid background and stuff like that, and we are filing patents with actually a patent attorney from North Andover. Nevertheless, we are filing patents on it, where the results of this work would purify the marijuana to closer to a 90 to 100% pure. Right now, it's average 50. I just wanted to let you know we talked to Osgood Street, the people of the Osgood Street. We're looking to potentially put business in that area to make the materials. And that's what I just wanted to let you know tonight. Thank you.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Hillman, could you please repeat your address just for the record? I'm sorry.
My original address was Lacey Street. Right now I'm in Haverhill, but we're looking to move back into North Andover.
Could you give your address in Haverhill, please? Your address?
10 Primrose Way,
Haverhill.
6204 Haverhill, right.
Okay.
But before then I was on Lacey Street, and then I lived in Mill Pond before I moved out. I also put 3 kids through college, and tuition is not cheap anymore, so you know.
Thank you. Whoever next would like to step or... It's public comment, and certainly it was helpful to hear, I think, because how this particular issue could impact Mr. Hillman. So I have no objection if anybody from the board has any objection. I think that it's always helpful to hear one way or another how people feel about this topic if they have an interest. Mr. Fuller, you're at the podium. You can... So you have to state your name and your address, please.
My name is David Coles. I live in Merrimack,
Your address at Merrimack, please.
16 Abbott Street.
Merrimack.
The gentleman that George is speaking about, the scientist, is my dad. And Dr. Goldstein, my dad sent an email to him. He never got it, and I noticed that they were having the thing at Osgood, so I went down and gave him all the information. My dad's technology, he's worked with a company from Boulder, Colorado last year, and he figured out how to separate cannabinoids. There's like 115 of them. They don't know which cannabinoids do things for appetite, sleep, cancer, seizures, and they were able to now separate them and do testing to find out which ones do what. And also, it's scalable, so he can actually, in a manufacturing plant that's as big as that, can scalably create targeted chemicals that will go to the pharmaceutical companies to make homeopathic medicines instead of the medicines that have all the side effects and are really bothering, they don't really help your health as much. And I just wanted to add that, because it's an opportunity to do something for mankind, actually, make mankind healthier.
So the high potency obviously would be used for medicinal reasons, or homeopathic, as you suggested,
Yeah.
not for recreational.
It's the fact that he went to Boulder because they have pesticides when they, in some of the stuff, so his process can get a pure.
But again, are you talking about this for recreational or for homeopathic?
Oh, I'm talking about it for homeopathic. It's,
Yes, that's, you
Yeah.
probably didn't hear me. Okay.
Yeah, but even recreational. I lived in Oregon for 2 years. I was on contract with Intel out there, and I saw the whole thing happen out there, the legalization. And the towns that were against it saw all the money that the towns that weren't against it started making, and they actually made like 3 times the projected amounts that they thought they were going to make. And all the other towns fell in line in about a year and a half because they realized that it wasn't, their concerns were trivial as far as what was going to happen to society, to, you know, crime, all that other stuff. It didn't happen.
There's some publications that have come out of this over the sales of marijuana is approaching over $1 billion per year. So that's one of the other aspects that we should be made aware of.
Thank you, gentlemen. Next.
Thank you for having me. My name's Mike Fuller. I live on 5 Rosedale Avenue. And I want to share a little bit of update on the from the Osgood Revitalization Committee, but also I wanted to share a few quick talking points. And as a citizen of the town, as an active member, I think this is the right project for the community, and now is the right time. But we have to act fast to recognize the economic and revenue benefits. If we wait, we're going to lose. I've seen what the project team has done, and they've worked hard since the May meeting to answer questions that people have, and town leadership has, and citizens have. I reviewed the project plan, and it's been posted online publicly, and I'm impressed with the level of detail and how sophisticated it is. So I hope we can put this back in front of the voters soon. A solid majority did support this project in May, and from conversations with friends and neighbors, I know that even more folks are ready to come out and get it over the hump here. And I'd also like to share that in less than a week, over 326 citizens have signed a petition through just word of mouth to publicly support this moving forward. And that's with no door knocking, no phone calling, just friends and neighbors talking. And I think that's a good number for the board to be aware of. So thank you.
Mr. Foley, can I ask you, are you a consultant or do you work for the Osgood Properties in any way, shape, or form?
Am I paid by them?
Yes, I'm just...
No,
okay.
I'm not.
Because you seem to have a lot of knowledge, that's why I asked the question.
Just a concerned citizen. I think this is very good for the town. But no, it's all volunteer on my side.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions?
Ms. Gould?
I'm Tanya Gould, 29 Blue Ridge Road, North Andover. I was at the town meeting. I thought there were some very good questions raised. I think Osgood has done really good work since then to answer questions. I think we have an amazing facility and we have an amazing project, and it's like catching lightning in a bottle. You do it when it's there, and it's there now. So I think if we wait for too long, the opportunity might move on. And I do not pretend to understand the financial components of what makes something like this work, but if the recreational production of marijuana is included in this project, I think the voters of Massachusetts have already determined that this is legal. If the whole viability of the project is partly contingent on recreational marijuana, we shouldn't let that hold up passing this project, because I think it's beneficial economically for our community, and the medical research could be amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms.
Hi, my name is Renee Hurley. I live at 162 Gray Street in North Andover. And I just want to say thank you. Again, this is actually my sister who spoke earlier. And it's grateful that we were able to come in. But part of what I want to acknowledge, just hearing everybody speak today, is I've lived in North Andover for about 4.5 years. I have a 4.5-year-old. We moved here when he was born, essentially. And I honestly didn't realize, I never became active in the community and realized we could come and attend these meetings, and just started to learn about some of these issues through actually North Andover Mom's Facebook page. But I'm really excited about just even having the opportunity and knowing that we should I think a lot of us young moms in the community be able to come out and speak and be part of this. So I don't really have much more to add to that. I just wanted to acknowledge that I think there's a whole group of us, even when we're talking about voting before, that weren't even aware that that took place and on any issue. And I think there's a whole community of us young moms and parents that it should become more active, I guess, in the community and be able to come and vote and know, just being aware that these votes take place and that we have a say in our community as well. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I second that. That is great to hear. Anybody else interested in speaking from the audience this evening?
Good evening, Dan Leary, 26 Andover Street. I'm a consultant for the project. I did want to clarify one thing from the last meeting in case it wasn't clear. So in your board packets, there is a memo that talks about licenses that would be requested or might be utilized by the Osgood project. And then I think in the last meeting, the question was asked about craft cultivation. And my comment was that we don't believe craft cultivation, we don't understand enough about what the intent of it is. It's not in the business plan, so we're somewhat indifferent to it. But we did go back and do some more research. I spoke with members of the Cannabis Control Commission to better understand what was the intent of this craft license. And it appears that it's really kind of geared towards outdoor agriculture in many ways. So I just wanted to clarify that that's not part of the business model, if that helps you in any way tonight.
Is it like, it's what, similar to what, community farming or something like that? That's how I took it to be.
It's sort of like it's intended to be a co-op of outdoor growers, or it could be indoor growers, but mostly outdoor growers. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no other comments, we will close. Yep.
Hello, my name's Rose Connolly. I live at 210 Bear Hill Road, North Andover, Mass. And I just wanted to ask our consultant.
Can you just, Rose, can you speak up because of the
Yes,
fans?
sure.
Thank you.
I just wanted to ask our consultant a question because I thought that was great that he spoke up. Would you
Ma'am.
say that it's a feasible business plan to do
Miss
the
Connell,
medical?
so this is a
marijuana?
public comment
Okay.
about the bylaw. As I've said, this
No,
is not.
it's related to this, exactly, 100%. I wanted to know if it was a good business plan for the medical marijuana piece, you know, the regulation of medical marijuana, if the regular recreational use is going to be eventually acceptable, then their business plan won't really be very viable if it's cheaper to just run forward with the recreational side. So I just wondered what their business plan was if the medical side is not as feasible economically for them to make money with, dealing with regulations and rules and costs.
So that's why I preface this meeting. I'm going to be really strict about, this is a general bylaw. And I think that we've struggled between meetings as selectmen where we
I just thought he
he
would have some knowledge on it. I've been wondering about it because it wasn't really addressed anywhere. But thank you.
And certainly the planning board is continuing to review this particular project. So if there were other comments relating to it that you just want us to consider, but this is not about the Osgood project. So any other general comments about this bylaw? Seeing none, we're going to close public comment, and I will now throw it at my colleagues. I know that we had a vibrant discussion 2 weeks ago, and I know the discussion has not seemed to stop since, or certainly not before either. So what we have before us is I set up the agenda this evening based on our prior discussion, where in our memo that we have been provided by our town council in order of licenses. It's not the exact order as our agenda. I kind of structured our agenda to reflect more what I felt our general sentiment seemed as board members. And so the first item on the agenda this evening is just general retail. So I will put it out there for any members.
Well, before you start that, though, I have to tell you that I am a little bit disappointed that this meeting where we're asking for public comment is held on a night when most people in town have no power. It's being recorded, but they cannot watch it at home. And when you have no power and you have little children and you're trying to prepare food or whatever, it's quite difficult. And I think it was a very difficult night for people to come out here and make public comment. We're grateful to the people who did come, but as I think we all talked about, just even getting here, the streets were quite dark. Most families are trying to just figure out how they maneuver in darkness. And this is the night that we've had for public comment. So
We've had multiple nights, Selectman Smedili.
But again, this was the night that we have called upon for them to come out for public comment.
A night that we called. We have made this opportunity available to the public more than once. And if people chose to wait until the very end of this evening,
Then they're out of luck? Is that what you're saying?
if they can't for whatever reason make it, but we did have the prior meeting, and as of course we've had several people email us, I know collectively as a board, I mean, that's always an option.
But you know, Selectman DiColigiero, as Mr. McHugh did say, we did have a vote, a ballot vote. This town rejected it. Then we did have a town meeting where it was rejected at town meeting because it required a super vote. Please let me finish.
No, because we have not had any votes for the public. We have not voted on these retail recreational bylaws. We have voted on a specific zoning piece relating to Osgood. But this is not a meeting about Osgood.
But you didn't
this
allow me
evening.
to finish my comment. So having said that, some people actually feel as though this issue has been settled. I have run into more people this weekend that didn't even know about it. They said, well, I thought that was all set, we're all done. I thought that they had to wait 2 years. So I think not, and you're shaking your head, I can see that you don't agree.
Because that's not what we're talking about here.
But we are talking about the marijuana, and I do think this was called upon to have people come in and speak, and we've chosen quite an unfortunate night to do that, and that's.
At no point, and I hear you, Selectman Smedili, at no point did any of my colleagues today say, Phil, Chairman, can we reschedule this meeting? At no point did anybody call, text, email. I mean, it's almost 8 p.m. We started this meeting an hour ago. I mean, before public discussion about this. And again, this is not our first meeting about this specific topic, and I understand where you went about there may be folks who are confused, but we've sent emails out via the town email system when it comes to our board agendas. We put it on Facebook. We've had it on the front page of the Eagle Tribune more than once. We've had it on the front page of the North Andover Citizen. I mean, I respect that it can be difficult. I mean, I know that, you know, we've had colleagues that were struggling to get here for work for different reasons, and that's why I felt this was so important that we have multiple nights of a public discussion about
Well,
this.
actually, I did come into town hall because, frankly, my phones sometimes were working, some weren't. The emails, sometimes it was working, some, and I have a generator, to be quite frank. And I said, so are we going, I had to come in because they couldn't receive calls. They only could make calls out. And I did receive calls this evening. So I came in to say, are we still going forward with the meeting? And I was told that you had decided to move forward with the meeting. So I did inquire.
So I'm, as the chairman and your colleagues, I mean, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, so as the chair, nobody asked me to move this meeting. Nobody said, Phil, can you please, Chairman, can you please move this meeting? I mean, even you're bringing it up at 5 of 8. I mean, we've been meeting for 55 minutes.
No, I just told you, I went into town hall to ask if we were still going forward with the meeting.
We decide if we're meeting, though. So who did you ask? We are the board that decides if we're still meeting. Nobody else cancels our board meetings. That's what you asked Lori Burzloff, okay? I mean,
I went in to speak because they couldn't receive phone calls today inside town hall. But this is what, I'm expressing my disappointment that for a meeting where we put out for people to speak on this issue is really an unfortunate evening to be handling this. And I think that we really should have either postponed or at least extended to another meeting. An issue that is important is this, that I feel as though needed more vetting. That's my opinion.
I don't want to add fuel to the fire, but there's more people here at this meeting tonight than we've ever
I
had.
agree.
We've
No.
ever had
Right, 3
in the
times as
last
many
year.
people commenting tonight as
No,
the last
I
meeting.
don't, I'm lauding the people who have come, absolutely. And not to,
If I can just bring it back, so just, and I know the chairman has tried to do this, but this may help in the overall conversation. The board is discussing this because about a month ago, now 3 agendas ago, I provided an email with a attachment from town council about the advice we were receiving from the state for the need for a regular bylaw. We already have a moratorium. We had a conversation about medical marijuana. We had a conversation about altering the medical marijuana bylaw at a town meeting. And this discussion is separate from that because it related to the legislation that was passed over the summer and advice we were receiving about how boards, depending on how they voted on the referendum question on the ballot, should be acting. And the advice was that if the boards, I'll focus on not city councils, but boards of selectmen, if the board of selectmen had an interest to limit or prohibit recreational, commercial, non-medical, whatever we want to call it, marijuana, then they should be communicating that. And from that, town council and I would craft a general bylaw to run parallel with whatever land use zoning bylaw happens. So the conversation that began 3 meetings ago and continues tonight is about crafting a general bylaw that ultimately shouldn't be crafted if the board doesn't have an interest to limit or prohibit. There is no bylaw required if the board doesn't choose to limit or prohibit one of the 5 categories. Ultimately, the board still has an opportunity at a future meeting to choose not to add that bylaw to an agenda, because you always have that right. You're voting today to direct us to create a bylaw. That bylaw will have to appear on a town meeting agenda. You control the town meeting warrant. So if we come back to you with that crafted bylaw based upon the limits of prohibitions, and you've decided for some reason you've changed your mind in fairness, then you can tell us not to include that bylaw or to alter it. But 2 reasons we're proceeding. One is to make sure that we're prepared for any future town meeting to have a general bylaw on there to address any limits or prohibitions, to run parallel with land use, and 2, that we felt it was important for your opinion to be expressed to the planning board, who's in the process of crafting a land use bylaw for the commercial / recreational / non-medical aspect of things. And it has been my advice to you, not legal advice, but practical advice, that your opinion should be expressed to the planning board so that when they're crafting their bylaw, they understand your thoughts, and they will then choose if they want to incorporate those thoughts. So it was really for twofold. One, to advise the planning board on your thoughts as the chief policymakers, and 2, to start to prepare for another town meeting where a general bylaw will really need to be crafted, which will run parallel to the land use bylaw. And you always have the opportunity, proceeding quite frankly, to alter that before it ends up on the warrant.
And even when it's on the warrant, on the
Or amended
legislative body of this town
Right.
can change any bylaw
Correct.
proposal that we have on.
Yeah. Or having
floor
a
of town
minority
meeting.
opinion.
They can make
And I
it
don't-
more prohibitive or less prohibitive. It's just, what we're doing is making a recommendation.
And we don't have a bylaw sitting in a can somewhere, so the reality is we're not prepared to come back to you with the bylaw. We just need the direction so we know which bylaws you want us to create, and then those bylaws will come back to you another time, ultimately for vote.
And I don't disagree with anything you said, and that's a good reminder that we can change it any place along the way. I just felt as though this was an unfortunate night to be having a meeting where we're looking for more input when people thought that many thought that the issue was settled with the previous town meetings and by the vote. So it's my opinion. And if the board has a different opinion, I respect that. And again, thank you all for coming out and speaking and taking a pretty brave speech. I commend you for that, for your medical use, and good for you, and your sister supporting you as well. So,
So I don't want to continue to muddy the water, but I think it's confusing what you just said, is that this issue was taken care of in the town. The issue of Osgood Landon was settled on the floor of town meeting back in May. This is a different issue. This is I don't want to say totally different issue because it is about marijuana, but it's about recreational marijuana. It's not about Osgood Landing. I understand the confusion. I mean, a lot of us are confused too.
it's
every day.
quite complicated.
Yeah, but it's really, I don't want to make it more confusing by continuing to include Osgood Landing with our discussion, because it's really Osgood Landing, and great points about Osgood Landing tonight, and that's definitely what should be brought to the floor of town meeting if this ever comes up again, but Osgood Landing. But this is different. This is about a proposed bylaw for how we want to handle non-medical use marijuana, retail, the craft cultivation, manufacturing, and laboratory. This is a different issue.
It
And I don't
is,
wanna-
but it is, but it isn't. We do have a proposal before us, before the planning board, that this will affect. Other communities don't necessarily have that proposal, and so many of our communities around us and similar communities have voted no, and it's just been shut down. So I understand what you're saying, but it does tie into what's imminent in the town of North Andover. And I think the concern I'm hearing from people, the phone calls I'm getting, being stopped in the stores, people are very concerned. So that's all, but fair enough. I understand. And I understand, I mean, this is an extremely complicated issue for a whole, it's a lot of moving parts. You know, there's medical, as you spoke of. There's 1 million square feet of recreational that is being proposed in this town. So it's tied in.
Well, so for the first item on, we have the 5 categories. The first one that we have before us is marijuana retailer. And just so for the public, for the folks here and for the folks at home, a marijuana retailer is defined as an entity licensed to purchase and deliver marijuana and marijuana products from marijuana establishments and to deliver, sell, or otherwise transfer marijuana and marijuana products to marijuana establishments and consumers. So that is the retail piece, and so that is the first of the 5 that I placed on the agenda. If we want, I feel like that would help just keep us on a structured path if we want to tackle one at a time and have that one be the first, if there are any thoughts.
Mr. Chair, I'll kick it off with a motion, and then we can discuss. I'm going to move that the Board of Selectmen prohibit marijuana retail establishments in the town of North Andover.
Second.
Selectman Valencourt made a motion to prohibit marijuana retailers, seconded by Selectman Nobley. It's now open for discussion.
I would say a reason to prohibit it would be that there's no first mover advantage, in my opinion, of retail sales. So there's no real benefit to that. We can see what's happening in other towns and make a decision later if we would want to sell it. So I think that's a pro for banning it, is taking a wait and see approach.
I would just concur. I think that there are many ways for communities to be involved with this product, with what it produces, what it offers. We're trying to look at the framework. I think that's really what we're talking about with the bylaws here, the framework of how North Andover approaches a whole new industry here. And I think it's on us to help kind of set the initial path for that. So I'm in agreement. I don't see really any advantage for us to jump into this on the retail side. Yeah.
I guess you know where I stand.
I would say the alternative side of the coin would be to consider the revenue that we will be passing up. That's obviously one way to make a lot of money on this new law is the sales tax on retail, which I guess we would not be making, just to put it out there.
I think that's a good point to make, though, because it's not, I think this issue sometimes gets thrown just to making decisions based on dollars. And I think this, is one way of identifying them. It's not just a decision based on dollars, because it is the most obvious and immediate dollar that communities would gain by accepting this. And that's just not where we want to be right now, I don't think.
I think you worded it well, Selectman Keen. There's no first mover advantage. And so it's the opportunity for us to look at how other municipalities handle it, how it impacts them, actually. It's not so much how they handle it, but how people react to it in those communities. And then if down the road, town meeting would like to take it back up, or a future board would like to take it back up, that's certainly an option. But we would be passing up some revenue, but that's always something that we can, if the community felt the need to, could fix down the road or respond to down the road. So I agree. I don't think that there's any, I personally don't feel there's any rush to go and do this right now. So any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of Selectman Valencourt's motion to prohibit retail, or make a recommendation to prohibit retail marijuana? Say aye. Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Next item on the agenda is Craft Marijuana Cultivator Cooperative, which last meeting we ended with a little bit of I think confusion, certainly not incredible clarity on this topic. I know that Attorney Egan is here this evening. We have heard a little bit more discussion about just the cooperative nature of that, but given that that was a question discussed at the prior meeting, if Attorney Egan wouldn't mind shedding some more light on this particular category.
Certainly. So one of distinction with craft cultivator cooperative is the business form that the business will take. That's one of the things that is within the definition. And I think the other big difference with this and other establishments is this is just to other marijuana establishments. So it doesn't allow for it's the sale, cultivation, production, manufacture of marijuana products just to other marijuana establishments. So it leaves out that consumer aspect of it.
So there would be no retail, obviously there would be no retail
Right.
sales of it. It's just from one manufacturer to another.
Right.
From cultivator to manufacturer.
Yes, and I know that there was some discussion as to that the CCC may be giving advice that this is to outdoor agricultural of marijuana. That isn't within the definition of the law, so I would say at this point, without any regulations that we're aware of, we don't know if that's a limiting factor here. What we do know is that there is a definition under the statute, and that allows, that it discusses the type of business association between Massachusetts residents to produce, manufacture, cultivate, or grow marijuana to other marijuana establishments, but not to consumers. So I think that's the distinction.
Is there an expectation there'd be any more clarity to that statute?
Well, yeah, the Cannabis Control Commission will be issuing regulations with regard to the recreational marijuana. And so I would assume that they're going to provide additional, because even as a part of the definition, it talks about the type of business organization that is approved by the commission.
Do you know what their timeline is for producing that clarity, or those? I mean, do they have a timeline? Do they? Or they
Yes, the regulations. I'm so bad with dates, and I should have that written down. I apologize. I believe the regulations will be issued by, I think it's the end of January. Oh, no, May 1st, I'm sorry.
May 1st, okay.
No, the
I'm
first,
sorry.
the first applications on the recreational will be received on April 1st.
Right, and I just can't remember the right date.
We're hearing a variety of different dates. I wouldn't necessarily say they're etched in stone. I would expect that you may see what I would refer to as draft, maybe as early as January, but probably somewhat later, with an expectation that they'd be more formalized about 15 days or so before the April 1st date. So we're a little bit away from getting, there's not great clarity on that, but we would certainly expect they're going to need the regulations prior to that April 1st date. And it could be, coming out in the form of a draft, get some feedback, another iteration. And that may happen as soon as January, but I think to be safe, it'd be more likely to expect we'd see final regulations closer to the April 1st date.
So it's still before our town meeting.
Before our annual town meeting, yes.
Is this category or this term used in other states? I mean, where does this kind
I'm
of
not
concept?
I'm not aware of whether or not it is. I believe that it's, it's pure speculation as to where this comes from, but it does seem to provide, so it's limited to Massachusetts residents who can form their own type of business organization, and it does allow them to sell to other marijuana establishments. So it's like I assume it's the small business owner that sort of provides a license just to Massachusetts residents.
It's interesting, why is there this kind of cutout for this
right.
business to business? It seems, I'm just trying to figure out what the origin, because getting your hands around it, because it seems so nebulous, is a little, we know what a retail shop looks like, right? We know what cultivation, the different categories of cultivation. This isn't so clear.
It isn't very clear, but I mean, it would make sense that it has more relating to outdoor growing of Massachusetts residents as a small business.
Sort of another example as well, there's been a lot of talk about a Freetown facility, which is more build the facility and sublet space for smaller growers. This, And it certainly
Yeah.
is an outdoor,
No.
but it may more align, I'm truly speculating that the nature of that facility, which was a large grow facility that would be permitted and built, but then sublet spaces for growers, would seem to lean a little bit to this category, where you'd have that co-op style. That's that's intended to be in, not an outside facility, they're building a building, but I don't know if it was crafted with that in mind, where there's been a lot of chatter about that facility, or whether that facility is modeled after something else in another part of the country, but it seems to lean more appropriately to that kind of use.
Okay, thank you.
Is there do we know if there's a limit on the size of one of these facilities? I mean, is it like a bunch of people getting together with their 6 plants, or is it something more
No, it
than
would
that?
be different than that. So I assume, so once again, we don't have the regulations, so we can't be very specific. We don't know actually what the regulations are going to say.
Right.
But you would assume that it's different than residents getting together with their 6 plants, or their 12 per household.
Right.
And establishing a business in that way, because that's allowed for private use. That's not a commercial, that's something that people can do for their private use. So this is more looking to that commercial aspect of being able to cultivate it and sell it, or manufacture it. I mean, the list of activities that is within that craft cultivator includes everything within a marijuana establishment, but then it has that different aspect to it, of the form of the business and the limitation of only selling it to other marijuana establishments.
Because of the nature and a little bit of still confusion of this, I would vote, make a recommendation to vote no on this.
To prohibit.
To prohibit it, yes.
So is that a motion? You
That was my motion, yes.
I'll second that.
It's almost a double negative. You have to, thank you for clarifying. It's almost like, it's almost reverse. So yes, I am saying to prohibit it.
Again, and seconded by Selectman Valencourt, so we can have more discussion. I think that the Attorney Egan and Selectman Smedili, you said a similar remark that, there's still time that we can learn more about this. There's no reason to rush in. If I think about what was discussed under the prior license category, there's no reason to rush into this if there's information that we think still may be coming out.
My comment also related to really all 5 of these is that a retailer and a craft cooperative really more are focused on the individual. So an individual buying for their own personal use, or an individual or group of individuals growing in a cooperative manner, but it specifically mentions residents in a limited partnership. So it's almost like those 2 categories are more geared toward an individual, whereas the other 3 categories are more geared towards business. And when I think of the residents of North Andover voting on the recreational question, and the residents that I talked to, it seems like in their mind they were more thinking at the individual level. I don't want to buy it, I don't want anyone else buying it, I don't want to grow it, and I don't want my neighbor growing it type thought process, just from the people that I spoke to. So I would be inclined to have the same opinion on retail and cooperative, because it's from a individual, I guess, standpoint, versus the others, which are really more a business enterprise. That's just my...
Yeah, I think the definition of this, it seems a little bit more unstructured, maybe. I mean, when we talk about, a large-scale business, you talk about the security aspects and the profession and the research and development. This just seems much more loose, around what it actually is and what it can actually produce. And I understand the business-to-business aspect of it, where it's really not being produced for sales to individuals, but it's still, where can these pop up? What's the regulations around them? Are they, I think we have still some work to be done on defining this and understanding what it means. So I agree with the prohibition, and let's take a very conservative stance on this one as well.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries, so the record show that for craft marijuana cultivator cooperatives, we are also asking for a prohibition. The third item on the agenda, marijuana cultivator. And so again, and I may have even missed this in the prior one, but for the folks at home and in the audience, a marijuana cultivator is an entity licensed to cultivate, process, and package marijuana, to deliver marijuana to marijuana establishments, and to transfer marijuana to other marijuana establishments, but not to consumers. So,
Mr. Chair, I would vote to prohibit this as well. I move to prohibit this.
motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it for the sake of discussion.
Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. The floor is open for discussion.
So I had the opportunity last week, I was in Denver for a national mortgage banking conference. So last week there were 4,000 mortgage bankers running around Denver. So, but it gave me the opportunity to do some, really find out what these facilities are about. And I think there's a lot of discussion about how complicated this is, getting our hands around it. And it seems to me it's really behooving upon us sitting on this board to go out and educate ourselves and really find out about this industry, about the businesses and how they work. So to actually go to a facility, see how it was developed, what the issues are, how it's managed, and I think just as importantly, meet with the people who are managing and running it, find out how they got involved, what their issues were day to day, what their goals were for running that facility. And I mentioned, I guess I'm interjecting this because we're moving to that part where we're really talking about creating a bylaw that would allow a business or allow a type of industry into our town. So I think it's important really to, understand the scope of the industry. And I can tell you three takeaways. And I visited 3 facilities, spent over 3 hours talking to the folks. And the first thing you see is really the speed of the evolution of the business. So, cultivation, manufacturing, distribution. When you look at what a facility, how it was built 3 years ago, to one that was built 6 months ago, to what's the possibility in our community or other communities. It's amazing when you look at the technology, the materials of construction, just the whole process. So you could see the speed factor, and that kind of speaks to us making a decision here as things are moving. The second is the role of technology. We talk about innovation, and this is an industry where the innovation isn't just the end product. We keep thinking about this end product, end user, medical, or wherever, but the innovation is actually in the equipment and how it's monitored, how it's manufactured. All those pieces are patentable technology. And if you think about it, that's also the businesses that you open up the door to if we allow cultivation, distribution, and independent research, because it's really about the tools themselves, right? If you can patent the tools to do this, then it's much larger than what's happening in a facility in our town. And to bring in an industry, to be part of an industry that does that, to me, is a much larger picture than just the cannabis component itself. And then the last part of it really is the scope of the products. And that's just overwhelming, because as there was some discussion here tonight, we're in the infancy of figuring out how to use this this component. And when you look at the breadth of the applications, to be in a position to open our town up to businesses that do all these components, that from when you talk to these folks and really see the level of sophistication, excellence, and business acumen in a young industry, take away what the end product is, we'd be tripping over ourselves. Tripping over ourselves. To me, it's like Amazon, except guess what? We have control of it. This is our Amazon. And that's why I think it's so important for us as a board to educate ourselves really on the scope of this and what all the implications are potentially of drawing in businesses. So I'll get off my stand here, but as I say, going out there and seeing this and really seeing a facility and seeing how does it work, what have been the challenges, how they've overcome that, and how that business is growing, is changing, it's really amazing.
For me, I'm pleased that you went. I've actually been asked to tour a facility, and I probably would do that. And I appreciate that you took the time out of your busy schedule to do that. To me, it's not the technology of cultivating this product. It's the product for recreational use. We all just received a letter from Dr. Michael Connolly, and I would, if you will indulge me, I'd like to read this in because it does talk about this particular product.
You are a member of this board and
Okay.
certainly read.
This is, some of you might know Dr. Connolly. He is from North Andover. I have to say, he's not a relative. North Andover is being challenged by outside interests seeking to profit from the legalization of recreational marijuana. This comes in a shift in attitude about marijuana that have included the legalization of marijuana and use at the state level. At the bottom of this popular misunderstanding that marijuana is harmless and should not be regulated, as a physician and a pain specialist, I'm often asked about the use of marijuana for pain. I have seen the national healthcare crisis that resulted from a shift in attitudes towards the use of opioids for chronic pain. I have been challenging this use of chronic opioid for years, and my understanding of the brain leads me to the challenge, the shift in attitudes about marijuana use. This is especially important because of the misleading message of those looking for a share of the easy money. I grew up in North Andover and returned here after medical school and residency to raise my own family. My wife and I have benefited from the community of families dedicated to doing what is best for their children. Together we have built and rebuilt schools, a youth center, a senior center, police and fire stations, and town hall. All of this was done with hard-earned dollars through our property taxes. North Andover does not need drug money to sustain our community. The legalization of marijuana is a threat to the children and the adolescents that are the treasures of North Andover. It is a challenge of all parents who will need to understand and address at home. They do not need the additional burden of their town being the pot-growing capital of the region and the implicit endorsement that marijuana use is safe that comes from this distinction. THC is the chemical in marijuana and is a psychoactive drug that affects memory, coordination, and concentration. This affects how we think, learn, and respond to hazards. Much is debated, but some things are clear about the adverse health effects of marijuana use. Here is a summary supported by references. There is clear evidence that chronic use of marijuana can lead to addiction. The risk is 9% overall and 17% when use starts in adolescence. The developing brain of adolescents is more vulnerable to adverse effects of marijuana use. The alteration in brain development has been linked to use of marijuana in adolescence. There is an association between marijuana use and significant declines in IQ. Early exposure is linked to an increased susceptibility to addiction of several drugs later in life. Animal models show that THC can prime the brain for enhanced responses to other drugs. Cognitive function is impaired for days after marijuana use. There is an association between early marijuana use and poor grades. Long-term use is associated with long-term cognitive impairment, especially when use starts in adolescence. THC levels are clearly associated with driving impairments and is most common illicit drug reported in fatal accidents. I'm almost done, so I appreciate the board's indulgence. The potency of marijuana is increasing based on measurements of THC concentrations from 3% in the 1980s to 12% in 2012 and what we heard tonight to an even more purer form. There is clear relations between adolescent marijuana use and the perception of risk. ER visits related to marijuana use are steadily increasing. Increasing concentrations of THC in marijuana and the perception of less risk threaten to increase the adverse effects of marijuana in our society, and especially for our children. This is particularly heightened by an endorsement of marijuana use that is implied by hosting a pot-growing facility. This endeavor, spearheaded by our town interest, is clearly intended to be a profit center. Let's not accept the proposition that it is for research. There is legitimate place for research for any drug, and Massachusetts hosts some of the nation's finest medical schools, teaching hospitals, and pharmaceutical companies. There is a clear need for more evidence, research, and education, but this should not be a cover for authorizing a facility whose primary purpose is profiting from the use of marijuana. Think about what North Andover represents, our collective priorities. More than anything, think about the children. Read the evidence we already have. Please do not be blinded by the money. And this is signed by Michael Conley, MD, and also a board-certified pain specialist from North Andover. And he has cited, and I won't read those, all the documents, all the research that goes into him forming this very educated opinion. So with that, I'd just like to add, this town has worked so hard in being a fantastic community for kids. And I think, frankly, I'm very proud of it. I see people out here who I know have contributed, and they're all good people, even if we're on different sides of this issue. This table is filled with good people. But if we were to choose that this is the direction and what we would like for our town and for what our town to be known for is the largest pot-growing facility I've been hearing in the world, whatever, it's 1 million square feet. And then we talk about all the jobs and the money. So you need to really think, is this the highest and best use? Is this really where we would like our children to take a job? Is this the jobs that we were hoping for our kids? And for that reason, I cannot support. As so many other communities, some very similar to our own, the surrounding communities have rejected this. And I would suggest to the board, we should reject it. We can look at it again in the future. If this is as great as everybody says it is, but I just can't see that this is really what we want for the town of North Andover. And I yield to the rest of the board. And thank you to Dr. Connolly. I guess you all received this. I came and picked mine up. And it mirrors pretty much what Ann Schneer had said, who was also a doctor of chiropractic.
Who said that? I'm sorry.
Ann did, the woman who came at our last meeting.
Annie Gleason.
Annie Gleason Schneer. I'm sorry, I'm dry from reading that. But who is also, along with her practice, is in pain management. That's what she does, and she's a counselor, which I did not know until she came. She's across the park from me, but first time I've seen her in years. But I just think we have two professionals that are in this field that are warning us, be careful. So again, now I will yield to the rest of the board.
So I personally don't hear unanimity. I mean, I was at a wake before I came here this evening, and I was pulled aside by a nurse who's at one of our local hospitals, who said, I heard you're voting on this tonight, and I had to explain the nuances of what is being voted on. And she was reminding me that one of the biggest obstacles that are faced by people who use marijuana today is that oftentimes it's laced with much harder substances. And so that the opportunity to procure marijuana, if someone's going to be using it, and knowing that it was something that was grown appropriately and actually monitored correctly, that it was actually a product that was tested in advance, certainly there's an appeal. Again, I don't think that this is necessarily a I don't think this is an issue where the health field has come to a near unanimous decision. But I do appreciate the work that Dr. Connolly put into providing this, and certainly the perspective he offered. I think that the fortunate thing is that this is something, right now, for this particular category, we're talking about the cultivation. So this isn't going to be sold at a retail establishment in North Andover. As Ms. Gould pointed out earlier, I think she put it rather succinctly, it was something that the state voted for. And so if the state voted for it, we have chosen this evening to recommend that we not, and of course it's up to town meeting, that we not allow retailers. But certainly, I don't see any reason why we can't provide growing the materials that other communities want to sell.
For recreational use, but there's something, I'm going to try to say this as politely as I can, and not for you to take offense. There is something really unseemly. We'll grow the largest marijuana growing facility in the country, the world, this side of the Mississippi, however you want it. But we don't want it here, but you guys, we'll let you and other towns have. There's something just not right about that. There's something, I think, that's telling us, we're really not that quite comfortable with this yet.
I know plenty of reformed alcoholics who own bars, Ms. Medili. I know people who absolutely do not drink an ounce, do not drink a drop of alcohol, that own bars. Because if there are other communities that want to allow this, and there are certainly voters in other communities that overwhelmingly want to allow this. I mean, we are, I think this board earlier this evening in its unanimous vote reflected in its vote what the community voted for at the ballot box. But in this particular case with the cultivation, I don't think that this is something that we have to be so rigid about. I think that if other communities want to sell it, they need a place to grow it. And if we're willing to be the professional facility, if we're willing to host professional facilities that grow it, I mean, we have plenty of industrial buildings in this community where things happen that we don't necessarily know what's happening in them, and there are certainly communities around us that, and by the way, we know what's happening, but I mean the details.
You need to report those.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the point being that I think that having a growing facility isn't as in your face as I think some folks are fearful it would be.
The distinction to be made between, whether it's unseemly or not, I think the difference is the first mover advantage. We don't need to be we don't need to have retail here because there is no first mover advantage to it. However, if you look at a cultivator, there is a first mover advantage. If we don't allow it now, then the other communities that are allowing it and that want to sell it are going to grow it, and they're going to earn the money from it. So there is some first mover. It's a bit of a nuance, but I think it's worth considering. Because if we took a wait and see approach for the entire thing, we would, if we decided later to sell retail, we're probably not, we would still make a ton of money if we decided later to do it. Not that I think we will, but versus cultivation, if we decided later we wanted to do it, might be a lost opportunity at that point because there won't be a need. And sorry, one more point just to react to the comment of, do we want to be the biggest in the world or so huge? That's not what we're voting on tonight. We're voting on, do we want to allow growing it or not? The planning board is going to determine and make a recommendation to us how large the facility should be. So just to be clear.
I know, but I hear you, but we can't put blinders on. We know this is coming.
Agree, I'm just making clear to the public that we're not
Okay.
voting on 1 million square feet right now. We're voting on, do we want to allow any business in North Andover to cultivate marijuana?
And I think we heard a compelling argument tonight from, I think her name was Mrs. Kent. I want to make sure I get that right.
Chen.
C-H-N?
Yes.
Okay, Mrs. Chen. A mother, I don't think she mentioned how many children she has, but also with a demanding job, who has seen some pretty remarkable changes in her physical condition based on using medical marijuana, none of which has impaired her from doing her job or raising her children. But it has kept her 50% less headaches. Also, she was in the hospital for an ulcer from medications that she was taking, pharmaceuticals that she was taking, and what other opportunities are out there that if we don't allow research and development, don't allow this cultivation, that could be out there that we're going to lose out on. I mean, I didn't even know that it had effects on those type of headaches as well. I mean, she had suffered from daily headaches, and that's cut in half. I mean, that's huge for someone. I still couldn't imagine having, a headache every other day, but that's gone away for that. That's a much improvement in her life. Then the other young girl that she mentioned from Colorado, who's now seen a much higher quality of life because of medical use of marijuana. I know, this is we're talking
Retail,
about
yeah.
recreational.
If she can use it, she can get it, yeah.
We're talking about recreational here, and I think that, I'm sorry.
Excuse me. Quiet, please, in
I'm
the
sorry. But, I think to make the business viable, we've heard over and over again, the business plan requires that they have a cultivation license for marijuana. And also the laboratories testing. It's all part of it.
I know that.
We're going to vote on that as well.
But let me just respond. I know it's a little off message, even I respect Dickie with his right to speak to that. You don't see Pfizer having to grow $1 million worth of marijuana to do research. You don't see them doing that.
How do you know that?
Yeah.
Because they don't have a million square feet growing facility to supplement their research and development.
Because they have a different business. They're creating pharmaceuticals. I mean, and I'm sure they're investing billions of dollars into their research and development into pharmaceuticals.
I guess you're missing my point. Is
so.
You're saying that they need this money in order to have the money and the resources to do the research. And I'm saying if the research is good enough and profitable enough and it has value, why would you need to supplement it with 1 million square feet of recreational marijuana?
They need a commercial license to do the research.
You can't have you can't do the research without getting the commercial license. And it really comes down to this. Do we have a way for that manufacturer that's making Jack Daniels to say, you know what? You can make Jack Daniels, but only if it's poured by responsible servers. Everybody else, you can't have it. You don't have that choice when you let Jack Daniels manufacture in your town, right? It's the same sort of thing. You don't have the choice to say, hey, you can cultivate it, but you can only cultivate it if it goes to this use. That's not a choice. So the choice really comes down to something very straightforward. Do we want to say, give the opportunity to cultivate this product that has tremendous medical and research opportunities for it? Are you willing to flush that because you're saying, personally, I'm not comfortable with people getting it and using it for recreational?
Yeah,
I'm not ready.
I am willing to say
Outside
that.
of North Andover.
Outside of North Andover. I'm not.
But not in our town.
I'm not willing to make that trade-off.
I guess, see, I am.
That's absolutely your choice.
Any further discussion on the motion? So that, again, this is Selectman Smedili's motion that was seconded by Selectman Valencourt to prohibit the marijuana cultivator category of the 5 licenses on our agenda. So a yes vote would be to prohibit, a no vote would be at that point to do nothing and bring it back for general discussion.
So a yes vote, just to make myself clear, a yes vote is to prohibit.
A yes vote is in the affirmative of your motion, which is to prohibit.
Thank you for clarification.
So all in favor of Selectman Smedili's motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
No.
The nays have it. Back to general discussion. So we have voted, and just to be clear, again, and this is also for the public, though the board has voted against prohibiting. Part of this discussion is, well, do we want to place limitations on this, or do we want to do nothing, which is an option? Were there any limitations that the board wanted to place on this particular category?
I know there's strong feelings about recreational use marijuana. Do we want to, is there some options that we can consider to say, we can, there can be a certain percentage of recreational use and a certain percentage of medical marijuana cultivated at a facility?
Perhaps could either our town manager or the town council address the...
I'll yield to Suzanne. I didn't think you could get that nuance, but I'll yield to Suzanne.
So I think what you're considering right now is the different types of licenses. And that's what your overall discussion is tonight. And then what you're asking is whether or not you can how those licenses can be combined in one facility? Is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So what you can do is you can limit, so the law allows you to limit the number of establishments and put time, place, and manner restrictions on those type of establishments. So that would be the size of a facility, a size of an establishment. So what you could do, you could say, well, we only, this is sort of how you can get to where you're going, I think, is we only want to limit it to a certain area, and we only want that to be a certain size. So you would say, if you were going to say cultivation, marijuana cultivation will be maybe one in this facility at this size. And that's what you would do. And then when you get to your next license, so then you have the medical marijuana piece, and that's not sort of before you tonight, but that is within zoning. And you have and that's part of what the planning board is looking at. So you could make a recommendation, or they could have the input from the Board of Selectmen that you would want to limit the medical marijuana within that zoning bylaw that they're looking at now.
The size of the facility.
The size of the facility, because that is one of the questions that is before them for consideration. So the size of the facility, and also, where a facility will be allowed, and the type of marijuana within that facility.
I'm sorry, so you said that for the recreational, there could be a limit in terms of the size, but I was under the impression from our last meeting that that was to be done by the planning board.
Well, that is what the planning board is considering, so that wouldn't, so the planning board in their zoning bylaw is looking at the time, place, and manner, and so where, the size of the facility, essentially. But within this conversation, the board has the ability to limit the number of establishments. Right. And there's nothing in the law that says that you cannot place that type of restriction on the establishments.
The size.
It's just sort of, yes, so where is it going to be? Is it going to be through your zoning, or is it going to be a general bylaw? So as an example that you...
Well, it can be both.
It could, it wouldn't, it may make
You just wouldn't want them in
regulation.
conflict.
Yes.
Right.
It may make the regulatory process really difficult if you do a general and a zoning bylaw, so you probably would want to be consistent throughout.
You would want to be, but you're not required to be. Right? If there was a citizen petition limiting the size.
That would be
Exactly.
zoning. Wouldn't that be zoning petition, though? It'd be a zoning bylaw change.
I don't believe so.
Wouldn't that, in that scenario, just be a poorly written bylaw where perhaps we would want, again, we'd have two conflicting bylaws, we would want to make them
That's
consistent?
the risk that we take with this. You could have a general bylaw that says one thing, and you could have a planning board bylaw that says something else.
Right, so in terms of...
And just because someone doesn't like them, they shouldn't be thrown out. I would argue that that's their right as a citizen.
What, now I'm confused. The citizen meaning,
If a citizen put together.
yeah, but this is not that. This is.
I know, well, she's answering that question, I'm just.
No, so what I'm addressing is
What my
the
question was,
right.
in a single facility, if they were licensed to cultivate marijuana, can you specify percentages of medical versus recreational marijuana? So can we say, you can grow 25%, I'm just making this up, 25% recreational, 75% of your product would be used for medical use. Is that something that we, through a bylaw, can regulate, or at least dictate?
So I guess my advice would be it would be very challenging to do it through a general bylaw, and you'd be better served to do it through a zoning bylaw, because then because then you'll have consistency with your regulations, and also the zoning law is much more attuned to dealing with issues like that.
So you would limit the square footage that can be used for growing recreational marijuana as opposed to medical marijuana?
Exactly.
Okay.
So that's part of the questions that they're looking at, is should any limitations be put on those types of uses? And I would say that is much more appropriate than trying to do it in a general bylaw, because then you're just making it confusing.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I was asking the town manager, so forgive me if you asked this. So are you looking, can you limit the size or the percentage? So say
Well,
it's a
the
million
answer to the
square feet of recreational.
My original question was about the percentage, but the answer was you would do that by a zoning bylaw, which dictates or regulates the size of the facility that would grow recreational and would grow medical. So I guess I
It's a
would
combination
yield-
of both
I would yield
percentage
my
and
comment
size?
To see what the planning board is proposing for their zoning bylaw to cover this.
Well, let me ask you, Selectman Valencourt, do you have concerns about the million square feet?
No, I don't.
Okay.
My concern was really around what I've heard here tonight about concerns over recreational marijuana, and, you know, I agree with the benefits of medical marijuana, and I think there's research that supports that. I appreciate Dr. Conley's, and I respect his opinions, and he's a pain specialist, he knows the world's more than any of us do, and I absolutely respect his opinions on this. I think there's been, you know, we heard someone here tonight who has direct benefits from this, and I know there's been millions of other people that have had benefits from medical marijuana. So I want to...
I don't know that he actually spoke out against medical, I'm not sure.
Well, no, you're right, he didn't. That was a question that I had.
He was saying that
hoping-
by doing this, we're telling our kids, it's okay. That's,
Well, what he basically
I
said,
don't want to paraphrase for him,
He
but.
said something that I am asked regularly about the benefits of medical marijuana, but he really didn't go on to elaborate on that at all. He switched to opiates. But I guess my question was around the concern that I've heard about recreational marijuana. And so my thought was, is there a way we can, you know, continue or you know, ensure that, or at least, you know, not shut down the project for medical marijuana, but knowing that there's a certain economic viability that's required by also having a recreational marijuana, but can we control the size of that? And I think through the zoning bylaw is what our vehicle for doing that would be. And I think the planning board is preparing that zoning bylaw now. I haven't seen a draft of it yet, so I don't know if they've already addressed that in there, and I guess I'd like to see that and see where they've gone with that.
Or if they're even going to go with that. Their decision is to see that application has to be significantly different. Who knows? They're still, and they have several public hearings ahead of them, so.
Sure, yeah, they do. They have several public hearings coming up.
So as part of the conversation you're having, at least for now, I don't think there's any issue that this couldn't be further nuanced as it becomes clearer. But I think as a conversation as it relates, so you've gotten as far as saying that you're not going to prohibit it. So the question would be limit, and I'd leave for now that limit at a higher level in terms of number, not percentages of square feet, so forth. You'll have an opportunity to see the zoning bylaw. Again, this can be revisited in terms of that. We can try to obtain some clarity as to how nuanced the bylaw can be. But I think I'm struggling with the idea that the bylaw can contain the kinds of provisions that would be traditionally held in zoning bylaws. You know, no more than, you know, that kind of percentage.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm yielding that to the planning board to when they come up with their zoning bylaw. I mean, I think I've gotten clarity on the question that I had, and I think, you know, the zoning bylaw is the right place to put that.
Agree.
So again, we don't have to take any action on this particular category if we wanted to move on. I mean, I feel like we've discussed it. Hopefully that the town attorney and town manager have been given enough direction from this board. Unless, do I hear a motion? I don't want to be too quick.
I guess I move no action. Is that an option at this point?
I think if you're looking for clarity from the board, if you want, I mean, certainly can't hurt that you have that formalized vote, so.
I think we've heard that. If there's no motion, then you don't have to take votes to allow, you don't have to take votes to limit. So whatever you don't take as vote, we'll take as an assumption that you haven't voted.
So we don't need a motion for no action?
I think we're
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Other than, I guess, and to your credit, Selectman Valencourt, I would like the ability to revisit this if we felt as though that the planning board or whatever wanted more input from us. That it's just because we don't do anything tonight doesn't mean it's necessarily over. That's all.
No, I don't think so.
No,
I
that's
think
what
we
I'm,
have- yeah, I
again,
think we
yielding
have-
to you.
Yeah, I think we have right up until, the publication, and then again, we always have the ability on the floor of town meeting to make any modifications to anything that's on the article, on the warrant, right? So, I mean, anybody can do that. That's open. That's the legislative body of the town that can do that.
So the fourth item under this license is the marijuana product manufacturer. So again, for the public and for the audience, marijuana product manufacturer is defined as an entity licensed to obtain, manufacture, process, and package marijuana and marijuana products, to deliver marijuana and marijuana products to marijuana establishments, and to transfer marijuana and marijuana products to other marijuana establishments, but not to consumers. As previously stated, I will kick it off to the board.
Didn't we just do
allow
that?
it, so I
What do you-
Didn't we just
No.
read the whole thing?
There's three
Do I hear- Do I hear any motions on this topic, or general discussion that we can offer to provide guidance?
Well, I would repeat my vote to vote to prohibit it, but I can get a sense that's going nowhere.
So do you want to or not make the motion?
Well, I will make the motion.
Selectman Smedili, motion to prohibit, am I mistaken, prohibit?
I'm saying it right, please correct me. You know where I'm trying to
No,
say.
it's-
I'm
that's right.
getting
So
reversed.
so the motion is to prohibit, meaning not allow
That's right. thank you.
marijuana product
I have my own
manufacturer
notes that don't
category.
make sense to what I have to say.
So the motion made by Selectman Smedili, do I hear a second? Hearing none, the motion fails. I believe that's a
Fair
correct
enough.
term.
No, fair enough.
If we're comfortable, we can move on to category 5, which is independent testing laboratories. Okay, so we'll move on to independent testing laboratories. So again, for the folks at home, this is the final category that we will be voting on this evening. So an independent testing laboratory is a laboratory that is licensed by the Cannabis Control Commission and is accredited to the most current international organization for standardization, 17025, by a third-party accrediting body that is a signatory to the International Laboratory Accrediting Cooperation Mutual Recognition Arrangement, or that is otherwise approved by the Commission. It is independent financially from any medical marijuana treatment center or any licensee or marijuana establishment for which it conducts tests, and qualified to test marijuana in compliance with regulations promulgated by the Cannabis Control Commission pursuant to this chapter. Any discussion?
I would definitely like to allow it.
I feel this hits home to actually what we've been discussing quite a bit this evening.
Form of a motion?
No, because the motion is, if we want to allow it, we do nothing, but I'm just stating my support of it.
Yeah, I would concur. I mean, this is what makes it all work. This is the innovation piece of it. This is where the opportunity, in so many ways, and I think the message potentially to welcome this kind of business in our community is a great message to our kids, that we are business friendly, that we're creating an environment for entrepreneurship, and that there's industry opportunities for our children to get into industries that we never could have conceived 30 years ago, just like the cell phone, for all the good, the bad that it does, for all these sort of things, to be able to be, and I would like us to be thought of as the innovation center. And I think we miscategorize our opportunity here to talk about all this in reference to a pot farm as opposed to a true innovation center. And that in particular is why I think this is so powerful, because to me, this is the real core of the opportunity. But it takes all these other pieces to get there. So I absolutely agree.
I agree. I think we've talked about this, and each one of the ones that we've discussed as we talk about different uses and different benefits and cultivating, I guess cultivating is not a great word for it, but discovering new uses for it and new benefits, and without this type of innovation and without this type of testing, that's not going to happen. We're just going to be growing, and so I think this is, I agree with you. I think this is the core of it. This is the nugget that we're looking for.
Any further discussion on this topic?
I will not be supporting this. It's not that don't support the innovation or great science with medical marijuana. I still have to, in light of what's going to be coming before us, if this was on its own without the recreational piece. So, but for that reason, what's coming before us that we cannot pretend is not coming before us, I will not be supporting this unless it's a standalone. So it's confusing, and I hope that you understand where I'm going with it. But
Would you like to make a motion, or?
no, I could count.
Okay.
But just I'm on the record that I will not be supporting this, or how I'm supposed to phrase it. So if you're just letting it go, I don't know, I guess maybe I should make the motion that I would vote to prohibit it, because, yeah, it won't be clear, because then I'm presuming that you won't take action because you want it to stay. So I guess I'm forced to make a motion to prohibit it.
So a motion made by Selectman Smedili to prohibit the independent testing laboratory category. Again, the motion is made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
Just again, to be clear, because I'm tying it into the project, because that's what's in front of us, but.
And so let the record show the motion failed to gain a
That
second.
I didn't kill it just for the sake of, okay.
I think that with that, unless there was any final thoughts, this is what we set out to do several weeks ago. This is the vote on commercial marijuana establishments. So those are the 5 categories for the folks here this evening, for the folks at home. If there are any final thoughts.
So I will take the actions of the board as directions to craft a bylaw regarding prohibiting retail marijuana establishments and craft cooperatives, and to take no action in terms of drafting a general bylaw for the other 3 categories. Does that seem correct?
That sounds correct.
Got it.
With that, the next item on the agenda is licensing. However, seeing that we have nothing under licensing, I think that we can move beyond that. We have old business, and yet there is none on the agenda. New business. If there's any new business, but no, there's none on the agenda, none planned. And then, so finally, for any folks in the public, this is typically when we allow public comment. We did allow the courtesy of folks who wanted to weigh in on the topic of marijuana prior to our discussion, because of course it really doesn't make all that much sense for you to weigh in after. So it was helpful for us to hear from you this evening and all throughout this entire process. But so I would open the floor up to public comment for anyone who wants to offer final thoughts on anything town related. Hearing none, I will go to the town manager's report.
First, I'd like to report the good news that we received notice that we've received a $2.7 million MassWorks grant to make improvements, pedestrian improvements on around the former Fajetta Farm site, which will be a commercial and residential development that we should see activity on as early as next month. The total project is $3 million, includes a pedestrian signal, which will come from the commercial residential development across from Barker Street. And the balance of the work will largely be sidewalk improvements, or sidewalk installations that'll go from the farm stand on Barker Farm all the way down to Butcher Boy, and on the opposite side of the street back up beyond the development site. It allows us to create some more connecting sidewalks to make us more walkable. Certainly, anytime we receive a grant, it's always great. Ms. Keene knows that's when we build sidewalks, when we receive grants. I would say that this is the largest single grant we've received for infrastructure improvements from the state in our history, but it's on the heels of a $1.6 million grant for the Safe Routes to School and nearly $2 million worth of public-private funding along 114 near Merrimack. And so we're about to see the beginning of work that'll be improvements at the corner of the intersection of Mass Ave and 125. So the town will have seen, $6 or $7 million infrastructure improvements funded by the Commonwealth and or private partners. In this particular case, the developer of the property of the Fajetta site, which is Princeton Properties, will fund the soft costs. So of the $3 million total expenditure, $2.7 million will come from the state, and $300,000 in the soft costs for design and engineering will come from Princeton Properties. And they'll be here at your next meeting to allow you to accept that as a donation. And I would encourage you to do so we don't have to fund that. We're excited about the prospect of bringing 40,000 square feet of additional commercial office space, along with market rate development of 192 units that are planned for that site. So very exciting. We're having a press event tomorrow with Secretary Ash from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and probably some other state officials here at Town Hall. We use our beautiful lobby to do that, and we're excited about this grant. I want to thank Eric Afori and his staff for authoring the grant. We don't receive these often. It's important. It's a recognition of not only the need for the infrastructure improvements, but the job creations that go along with it. And so we understand this corridor is important. It's always been important to the board. Your support for what happens along the 125 corridor as it relates to the future of the community has always been emphasized. And in conjunction with about 80 jobs being brought forward by Life Foam and the former Solo Cup site in the next 6 to 8 months, we see this as steps in the right direction to bring the kind of commercial development to the community that you folks have always supported. So.
And this was one of the,
Okay.
and as Selectman Valencourt will remember, this was part of the study that we had that said bringing sidewalks, kind of closing it in a little bit is, slows the traffic down, hopefully, which is good for economic development. All good.
Yeah, and all I was going to add to that is I'd like to thank and congratulate Director Kapori for going out, seeking the grant, and then doing the work and his team to get that grant and bring it to the town. It's great.
Yep, it's all good.
And as you said, we've got a lot of good things going on the outskirts where we see potential, and then also internally with the Safe Routes to School. So a lot of good things going on that we can't lose sight of.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely thrilled, as you know. Sidewalks are a pet project, so very happy.
So that is it for the town manager's report, or?
I have the balance of the information that I provided in your packet, a pretty extensive list of the various reports we often provide you on a monthly basis. If you have any questions about those, I'm certainly standing ready to answer those questions. We've begun to reform the website as it relates to the master plan. You may have started to see some changes to the master plan tab on the homepage. It's not complete yet. It'll be complete in the next 5 days. The existing condition reports is posted. The timeline is posted. We're working on an executive summary and various other information that'll help inform our residents of the process as we continue. But even if you click on it today, you've seen change from the last meeting. Director Kafori and myself recognize the need to get some additional information out there, and I think you'll find as we continue to, it'll take us about a week or so to catch up, but as we put that additional information out there, I think you'll find it to be useful.
Thank you. And with that, do I hear a motion?
Move adjournment.
To adjourn. Motion made by Selectman Smedili. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Selectman Valencourt. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Happy Halloween, whenever it is.
We're done.